Time for Book of Experts TV.
Topics you love.
Experts you trust.
Friction-free referrals.
Tried,
tested,
Trusted.
This is Book of Experts, brought to you by salesman.me.
It is time for another episode of Book of Experts.tv. And today, maybe you've been thinking it's time to update your website. It's time for a rebrand of your website. What you might not realize is there's never been a better time for this kind of conversation. That's what our guest, Jason Ciment, I'm going to bring him on now. Welcome to Book of Experts TV. Jason, I've been excited to chat with you in general. Like, you've been sharing some pretty cool stuff in your newsletter, and you and I were chatting about some of that. But let's hit the headline hard. Why is now the perfect time to talk about updating your website and doing a rebrand?
So there's two reasons. One is because Uncle Sam can pay for a lot of it, and two, because Google has introduced a new ranking algorithm that they call Core Vitals, and that is forcing websites who want to maintain rankings or earn new rankings to revamp their websites to make sure that they comply with the Core Vitals requirements. So those are the two biggest reasons.
All right, so we hit this right off the top, because I know some of you guys were thinking about, what's this all about? I was going to sneak away, but now that you heard that Uncle Sam will pay for the website update and redesign, now I know you're hooked for that. Let's talk about Jason for a second. Jason, getvisible.com, you're joining us from LA. I know you've got a footprint of multiple offices. You've got developers all around the world, and you've got clients all over North America. How did you get into this space? Why is this the game that you chose to play?
So I was a CPA for a big firm back in 1990. Then I went to law school. I thought I was going to be an estate attorney. I passed the bar. I got sworn in, and standing in the courtroom, I was like, I'm not going to do this right yet. Let me see about starting a business. I could always be a lawyer, go back to get an LLM, and just do it that way. And I ended up starting an e-commerce business back in 96. And it worked. I was selling magazine subscriptions of all things. I was doing search engine rankings on Alta Vista and Yahoo and Excite before Google was ever a name brand. Google was actually a client of ours. They bought every magazine in our catalog for a few years. And people used to come to me and they say, hey, I see that you know about the internet. Can you do this? Can you help me build a website? Things like that. And then in 2003, I bought out the company that built my magazine website, series of websites by that point. So now I owned his technology. I partnered with somebody, and we started leasing out the e-commerce platform. So I started doing e-commerce marketing. And then in 2005 or so, started the agency Get Visible. Originally, it was called LA Design, but now it's a Get Visible, in order to do the marketing. And we started first with SEO, then we added pay-per-click, then social media, reputation management. So every couple of years, we would add more headcount and more clients as we grow. So we've been growing organically for over 15 years.
Wow. So you really got a long history in seeing the changes, which is going to make this conversation really interesting, because we're going to talk about some of the more recent changes. Let's return. Can you share a little bit more about what's going on in the space with, I want to hone in on this $5,000 tax credit from the government, and how you think people could leverage this to their advantage, because there's a time frame here that people need to be aware of.
Right. So my understanding, and I just learned about this recently, is that under the American Disabilities Act, you always think of that as a ramp into an office, but there's also a compliance for a website that you can do, which someone who is blind or visually impaired, they use a machine to read a web page. They can't see photos, so any image has to have text describing the image. They can't read the link, so the reader tells them this is a link and what it's pointing to. And so there are tools that you can embed into your website that connect with the reader or with the browser to enable an impaired person to take over the screen. But on top of it, there's coding you have to do in your website. So under the IRS code, if you create a website, invest into your website to make it compliant with ADA, if you spend $10,250 up to that amount, I think the first $250 doesn't count, you get a 50% of what you spend for this ADA compliant website, you can take off as not a deduction, but an actual tax credit. So let's say you spent $10,250, you get the write-off as the expense. On top of it, you get another $5,000 credit that goes directly against the taxes you're paying. So, I mean, this is better than PPP money, because PPP maybe you have to pay back. Here, you literally get the money for free, and apparently you can use this every year. So right now for 2021, if you're making your plans for the website, the core vital thing from Google, that's just a catalyst. But now the government is saying we're incentivizing you to do this.
And did I hear you say that there's not a sunset date on this this tax incentive?
So right now there does not seem to be, but last week the 11th Circuit, I think, released a position that suggests that a website may not actually be a ADA public accommodation, which means there's potential, it opens the door that the government may come back and look at ADA as it relates to websites and say, you know what, it's not a ramp and you're not getting credit for it. So right now the credit's available, and I think, just political climate notwithstanding, I wouldn't trust in anything being there forever. So if you have a chance to use it, don't abuse it.
Yeah, get in and get the work done. Plus, it's the right thing to do if you're making your material, your information accessible to more people. So
correct. I mean, right now you hear talk of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that building a website that is equally accessible, and you shouldn't have to necessarily wait for the careers tab on a website, because that automatically puts you into a category that strongly suggests you should be ADA compliant. I think it's morally, it's a good thing to do, to make a site as compatible to everybody as can be.
Yeah, and I think that this discussion, so for example, having someone look at your website or your marketing materials and say, you know, do we look like an inclusive organization? Are we welcoming to folks, and including seeing folks with different skin tones and, you know, different backgrounds, and how are we presenting ourselves, and again, being, so there's a number of different elements here, and this seems like a perfect time to consider, take advantage, and make some of these adjustments. What else could or should people be thinking about if now is the time for a rebrand of their website, an update, you know, stepping into a more modern stance with their marketing?
So if you use Google as an indicator, because most people are driven by concerns for search engine rankings, unless you're on a completely referral-based type business, the core vital list of requirements, the top of the list is speed of a website. Your pages have to load and zip by. That's why you're going to start hearing things like headless CMS. CMS is content management system. You'll hear alternatives to WordPress, because WordPress is hard to hit the high performance levels when you start adding in third-party plugins and things like that. And we build almost everything in WordPress unless it's e-commerce. Then we're building it in Adricom or Shopify. And so WordPress is still, I think the number is 67% maybe penetration in the marketplace. But even within that, there are ways to hack WordPress to make it operate much faster. So I think what you're going to see is no more rotating sliders on websites that are concerned about this core vital stuff. You'll just see much more streamlined pages. As well, you have to adapt for mobile. And a lot of times companies just punt on the mobile experience, and they just have the photos on there, and it doesn't speak to the person on mobile. People talk about mobile first, but it's not necessarily honored in a way that it could be. So I think if you first step is, I would actually look at your Google Analytics and determine where your traffic is coming from. And if you see substantive portion is on mobile, then you should rethink your entire mobile strategy to make sure that the bounce rates are good. And if they're not good, then it's another excuse to redesign.
And if someone has not, if they're at the point in their process where they do not have access to those Google Analytics yet, I think we've seen more than half of the traffic in general. This would depend on the industries, but more than half of the web traffic right now is coming through on the mobile side. Is that would you agree with that?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on the type of business. For example, anything that's temporal, time related. I mean, it used to be people were going to the movies. So anything related to going to movies or restaurants or activities was majority on mobile because people are out and they're looking for, how do I get there? What time is it open? What's the alternative to, if this place is closed, let me find someplace else. So it also depends on, if you're a science website and people are doing research, likelihood is they're going to be sitting at a desk rather than sitting on their phone. So you have to determine who your audience is, what type of experience you want to get. Also, if you don't care about search engines, then you can create some really exotic experiences for people with transitions and animations, because what you're selling there is the brand and the experience, and you don't have to be so concerned. It doesn't mean you should dismiss mobile. It just means that the same concerns you might have for core vitals don't exist. So there isn't one rule. For design, the rule is know who your audience is and design for your audience.
Yeah, I love that perspective of creating that experience, including the discovery aspect, if that's part of your strategy or requirement, planning that step-by-step process and carrying it through. Jason, one of the things that I saw from you that prompted our conversation today was you were talking about one of your clients, a website with a non-hero section at the top of the website. And I thought, well, this is kind of interesting because we see so many websites that seem to follow the same cookie cutter format. Can you talk a little bit about what those different experiences might look like and how you've catered them for various clients that you've worked with? I think that would be of interest for folks to sort of see an array.
So I'll give you what happened literally today. I was featured in another podcast for lawyers, and I posted on LinkedIn the fact that I was featured. But then what I said is, I have three choices. I could post a hashtag about content marketing, a hashtag about SEO for lawyers, and a hashtag for lawyer marketing. So they're all sort of related, but they have different audiences. And at the same point, I said, now that I'm posting, where's the best place to post? Should I do LinkedIn? Should I do an email to my newsletter? Should I do a press release or a blog post? LinkedIn was like 90% of the result of the survey. Literally said, you should totally post on LinkedIn, which leads me now to say, well, wait a second. Maybe I shouldn't post on LinkedIn if I really want to stand out, because maybe my voice is going to get lost on LinkedIn, because if everybody's posting there, then I'm just another, it's just more wind blowing. So I still posted on LinkedIn. The question is, it got me thinking. So when you talk about the hero section, the problem with the hero section is that it's now white noise because everybody expects a website to follow certain rules. And so therefore, if you just start with the hero, then your choices are, do I have sliding banners? Do I have just no photo and just a big positioning statement? Or do I have a positioning statement with some imagery behind it? That's pretty much where you're stuck with the hero. And so you're stuck with, how much new do I give to somebody who doesn't know my brand versus how can I just live within the familiar and make the messaging the unique part of it. So again, the rule isn't hero or no hero. The rule is, who's my audience? What's their tolerance for new? What's their desire for something new? So if I can skip the hero and I can go right into a sales pitch or a nurturing pitch, whatever because that first 5 seconds when you see the website, you got to grab them. So it's not necessarily that the hero is good or bad. It's really the messaging more than anything. So again, hard to answer. I'll give one more thing. I hate to be talking so long, but think about an article. When you write an article for a blog post, you can write to everybody, or you could write to one prototype, one person who may have similar people like that person. The odds are, if you write to that one, you're going to do much better for engagement and for sharing than writing something in a generic way. So I think a website sort of has that same thing. Who's your target audience? And then your highest target audience, and devote your attention to that type of person first. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it does. And I like where you keep bringing it back to, there's not one right answer here. It's going to depend on who your people are and what's going to serve them best. Jason, we've talked about everything from diversity and inclusion, the ADA requirements. We've talked about the speed of how quickly website loads, the web experience, the mobile experience, what are other factors that people should be thinking about that might not be in their awareness yet? But from some things that the average Joe doesn't. What should we be thinking about as we sort of ponder going into a rebrand of the website?
So two things that had happened this morning. I was in a meeting and we reviewed a company's website. They're a leader in their space. They've got all the technical things that look like they're working for search engine rankings. They've got the titles, the meta tags, the headers. They even have Yoast SEO, which is an industry standard plugin for WordPress. They have it all, but they don't have the rankings. So why don't they have the rankings? So part of it is they haven't updated their website for the core vitals thing. That's number one. So they know they have a performance issue. Number two, the content, even though they do not have duplicate content, they don't have great original content. And the content needs to have primary keywords and secondary or what's called semantic keywords. They didn't do a lot of keyword research to figure out what are the phrases that they should be ranking for and what are secondary phrases that Google wants to see on those pages in order to make the entire topic sensitivity of the page stand out. So number one is, how well are you doing in your content review of your competitors, of people searching and getting that content into pages that are topically dominant? So that's number one. The second thing is you still need to pay attention to your linking. So no matter what anybody tells you, if you don't have a good backlink profile, you're not going to rank, because the content is just context, it's relevance, but you have to be an authority, and authority only comes from other people linking to your website saying this is a worthy website, and every link is not the same. So authority comes from better valued links versus worst valued links. So those are the two things I would say.
So I'm gonna, for folks out there who, I just want to break down what Jason's saying so we don't lose anyone along the way. This authority of the backlinking profile that you described, and sort of there's going to be a quality score associated with these different links that are coming into your website. This, you can think of this like almost like the networking that we do. The more connected you are to other people, including some impactful or influencers who carry a little bit more weight when they make recommendations, the same thing is happening on the web, which is influencing your results in the search engine pages, the SERPs, SERP, search engine result pages. This is what's determining where you're showing up. It's a combination, it's a formula of all these different characteristics that we've talked about. So if this is important to you and to your business, to be able to show up on the front page of Google, and ideally in the top half of that front page of Google, then you have to pay attention to these factors. If your people are coming direct to you because discovery or search is not a key part of your strategy, then you can focus more on, I guess you'd call it the experience, right? Jason? You talked about using animations on your website and other things that could create that cutting edge feel or experience for a user, a new visitor to the website.
I'm going to add one thing because it happened last week. I did 3 LinkedIn posts on the IRS tax credit, and I wanted to compare how well the posts would do. And one post got like 2,000, one got 4,000, one got, I think, over 8,000 views, all on the same topic. But the difference on the one that got to 8,000, it's like you talked about the authority of a link. Somebody shared my link with an influencer, and that just boosted the numbers dramatically. So in the same way that you can have a social media influencer boost your views on a post or on a blog post, you have the same thing from a link. If you have an authority website that's linking to your website, it has similar impact on Google. So it's not quantity of links as much as the quality of links that matters for your backlink profile.
I think that's a great illustration. Thank you for pulling that together, Jason. Before we wrap up here, we've got getvisible.com as the URL. What else should other folks know if they want to connect with you, they want to enter your world? Where should they go? What would be the best doorway to enter it through?
Just go to Get Visible. I'm redoing jasonsiment.com, but that's not really, it's more personal stuff than the business stuff. I would say just go to Get Visible, fill out a contact form. We only have 15 people. It's not hard to track me down.
It also sounds like connecting, through your social media profiles might be to follow some of the content you've described several times, content that you put out there that would be relevant to different audiences, primarily focused on website search and digital marketing. I guess e-commerce would be another area as well.
Correct. So I definitely have my chops in e-commerce because we still run this e-commerce company. And I used to write for ClickZ, it's hard to believe, 20 years ago on affiliate marketing. So I think since fourth grade, when I was selling chewing gum to classmates in Miami Beach, I've had this desire to be a business person. I don't care about the money as much as I care about the deal. So I think you'll find one thing I've done is I've created different channels for what I do. So LinkedIn, I talk about marketing. Instagram, I talk about books that I've read because I'm an avid reader. So I think that's another lesson for people, is to use their channels in a way that's narrowly targeting the audiences they want to reach out to. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I agree totally. But be relevant to the conversation that's happening there, not my pet peeve these days are and I'm guilty of this myself. I'm complaining about it, but I'm retraining myself. But creating content, a piece of content, and then slicing and dicing and thinking I can put it everywhere, when you have to shape the right content for each of the channels. It shouldn't necessarily be the same thing everywhere. So
you said it better than me.
Great point. And I think you were born to be an entrepreneur, Jason. You talked about all the way from selling the bubble gum. I know you've got the law background and the accounting background, but it seems like this has been your thing, and it just keeps you going forward there.
It seems that way. It's a series of accidents. I don't know. Maybe it's the Robert Frost thing. I keep trying to take the other road, and I end up back on this road.
Well, it's the road that was meant to be for you. Jason, I really appreciate you taking the time, sharing a little bit of your background, some ideas about ways that people can improve their presence online, and particularly this tip about the tax credit and its availability. And I know some folks will really perk up when they hear that, and be thinking how they can make that work for their businesses as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right.